All right, what's good, everybody? This is Dr. Elerod Morris, aka Dr. Digital, and today we in the Teachers Lounge where amazing educators do amazing things. And today we got my boy to the left, the legend, the myth, the prodigal son, El Jefe, El Capitan, Dr. Monell.
About you? I thought he was talking about you.
And also to his left. Oh yeah, let me finish. Let me finish. I'm in high mode, son. Yo, brought me up, B. I got my man, yo, it's a candid situation, son. Just want to let you know, take the lid off. Got my boy from the Greensboro 336, Mr. Rashad Little. What's good? How y'all doing?
What's good, Doc? What's good?
I appreciate y'all coming, man. It's a candid situation, B. Anyway, yo, Dr. Monell, we're going to start with you real quick, if you don't mind. You please introduce yourself to the people, and then we'll follow by Mr. Little.
So, Jack Monell. Presently, I'm a professor at Winston-Salem State University, Justice Studies professor. Go Rams, go Rams. Shout out to the Rams. And beginning my 13th year at good old State U. And I do a lot of things on campus, but for the main thing, lecture, instruct, mentor, and heavily involved in kind of digital literacy and things of that nature.
Rashad Little, class of 2010, Winston-Salem State University. Got a social outfit called Cndid, Yams, Kickback. I also have a brand, Cndid Media, that focuses on digital education, digital media, and social media marketing and advertising. So
I appreciate that, man. Y'all looking good today, man, for the Teachers Lounge, man. You know what I'm saying? Feel like that.
Sundays are pretty
pretty chill day, B.
Chill day, G. Making money, bitch. Anyway, so this podcast, we cover a plethora of things in regards to the classroom and the school system, primarily to digital literacy, right? As you know, I'm a cyber guy, I want to pick your brains a little bit in regards to the school system and how you think digital literacy is impacted into the school system or infused into the school system. I know you did some research on digital literacy, and Mr. Little, you also captivate, an audience in the area as well. Y'all want to talk about that a little bit?
I'll let Doc take this one first.
Okay. I'm gonna pass the mic,
Nah.
A little cipher, man. Pass the mic. Nonetheless, so yeah, I mean, you can't be in education today without being involved, without digital literacy kind of intersecting, right? So, for myself, I do a lot of digital. So our campus, for example, traditionally we've had students use the old models of different software brands, and now we use some more innovative practices that allow for students to really use social justice and activism to amplify their voice. So what I do particularly is that I empower them to use these digital tools, whatever is readily available, to amplify their voice. Kind of like what Rashad does with his Cndid Yams and how he engages with the public in dialogue. We just do it on campus. And what I find is that today, more than in my gen, I'm a Gen X. So back, prior to, our generation, where the internet and digital literacy and fluency was starting to, it was kind of at its infancy stage. Now, these students, if anything they know digital literacy. It's just a matter of helping them cultivate how to use it effectively, because we know where there's good, there's evil, there's bad. But on campus, I found that students really, they're creative, right? They're creative, and where their skill set may not be strong in maybe another area or a different area, you incorporate the digital piece, it actually helps them, understand, comprehend the content, and then use the digital piece to help them kind of amplify that in the classroom and beyond, in the community and social activism and all, everything in between. So.
I think Doc covered it, but I think, in terms of digital literacy, it's all about taking the public from where they are, creating a curious mindset so that they can, once you teach them how to use those tools, to implement it in their own, life. I mean, obviously all of us have a cell phone, but we need to teach them, obviously, you don't know all the features that are associated with a cell phone, all the things that you can do. And so part of my work is just about that. Do you know what you have in your hands? Do you know the types of technology that are out there, right? Right now, we're dealing with the chat GPTs of the world, right? And figuring out how to use that. I mean, obviously in our educational component, I think digital literacy and just digital lifestyle in general needs to be implemented, because we're at an access now in education where we're literally going to have to turn the corner and embrace technology even more because of the digital age and digital learner right now. And so to Doc's point, I think we all can learn, but we also can teach as well. So
You think the chat GPT, the AI sector is going to really more or less hurt the economy versus helping it?
Well, the economy is something separate. But as far as what we do in the academic setting, it's problematic already. So,
How so?
I mean, quite frankly, because what you're finding is that, students are using it at high numbers, even right now. Because, it's still early in the game, and, students, some are using it, some are not. But what we're finding, at least from our standpoint, you still kind of can tell, it's like any other mechanism of analysis. Like, if you have a student who isn't doing well in class, probably doesn't command the information well, doesn't convey it well, but then they're producing dissertation level papers. You don't need to be a PhD to figure out, that don't really rock, son.
Right.
Like something don't connect. I mean, this is a brilliant paper. And then, if you run into some of the other kind of matching systems we have, you realize that it came from somewhere else. Because what happens is, then once the papers are created using ChatGPT and everything else and AI, it's like now they're there. So now students are using those papers. So it's gonna be an interesting kind of year, so to speak, because it's still early for us. But it is problematic because from an academic standpoint, because once again, the concerns have always been, allowing students to critically think, right? Letting them use their gifts to really produce an output, whatever that is, a paper, a test, exam, a competency. And if the AI is doing it for them, what happens when that option is no longer there? So for me, at least from my vantage point, I think it could be problematic. And then I'll flip it. I'll let Rashad go. It's like, I had a colleague tell me, man, y'all looking at this the wrong way. It was like, now you ain't got to write recommendation letters. You ain't we get inundated with that, right? Like, students say, yo, Doc, can you write me a letter? And I got 20,000 other things, so I got to bookmark everything so I don't, miss the deadline. But it's like, well, dang, I guess you could. And he's a computer scientist from another school, which is funny. He's like, man, y'all looking at this all wrong.
All wrong.
All wrong. He's like, y'all need to use it for you. Because the reality of it is we're not going to defeat it, right? It's here.
It's here.
AI is here, and in fact, there was an article recently about the founder of AI, at least for Google, and he was saying, man, he was like, he's very concerned at where it's going now. He's like, man, I should have thought differently in my earlier kind of creation of it. So anyhow, get right.
I mean, we've been dealing with AI for a long time. You think about the Amazons of the world or Alexa, that sort of, intelligent technology. And I think, education, is a gift and a curse because it's the slowest to adapt to change. And I think that you're going to have to, kind of get into that wave of understanding that digital media, you're teaching a digital learner and all of that, being able to elevate your mindset to understand that you need to embrace this and how to embrace it. Right. So, what that would look like is, all right, so instead of, trying to take command of, having students not write papers with ChatGPT, maybe the full staff do a training on what ChatGPT is capable of, so on and so forth, but also move that forward with augmented reality and virtual reality and all that sort of stuff to figure out how to get the student engaged in that. Because to our vantage point, if a student writes a paper and like he said, his dissertation level, okay, well, let's see what your presentation skills are like now.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
Using augmented reality to, do a simulation to, for us to understand what type of knowledge you actually have about this, right? So just really leaning into that curve, because again, learning is always going to take place. Where you are with that learning takes place is where schools have to figure out where they want to be. They can either be behind or they can be forward. So.
And we saw this with the phones, with the cell phones. That is, that we created all these policies, institutions nationwide.
Right.
No cell phones in the classroom. They created all these requirements, and what many found over the years was like, we're not gonna beat it. Students are gonna figure out a way to sneak it in or access it. How do you use it to help you help them learn and grow? So varying viewpoints figured out, leaving it, I do this personally. I leave the cell phone on the table, because psychologists will say if it's visible, the need for them to reach for it is not always profound. So they'll leave it, and then how do you incorporate it? Hey, flip your phones, Google this for me, and let's talk about whatever the content is. And then it number one, alleviates their anxiety, because the reality of it is, particularly this COVID generation, the trauma we all have experienced because of COVID has been incredible, globally. But it alleviates the anxiety. Then too, they're like, okay, cool. Like, they're not as pressed. I'm a criminologist by training, so you decriminalize the behavior, then the need or want they want to do it. They're not as pressed. Now, if you say you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it, then people are gonna by behavioral design, they're gonna try to get over it. So.
That's deep. I appreciate that. How do you look at like cybersecurity? Because it's kind of different now with the shift change, like with criminology that you speak of. It's a lot of schools and courses are being integrated with cybersecurity, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you feel that's being done right now in the school systems across America?
I mean, it's a highly sought after career track, right? And I speak from, high post and secondary education. So K through 12 is separate, but from the university standpoint, community college, university standpoint, I mean, it's a highly sought after major. Number one, criminal justice and theory, criminology. There's always a popular major because of Hollywood or whatever the case may be. But cybersecurity now, it has so many outlets professionally. You can go to government, go to military, you can go to law enforcement, you can go to private sector, and it's like, and then within that, there's like varying levels of, you as an individual. So from an educational standpoint, if you do not, to Rashad's earlier point, educational, like curriculums, that's what we talk about. Like curriculums grow, they evolve, right? What I learned back in the 90s is theoretically is still the same, but it has evolved. What you guys have learned when you were in school has changed. Computers, information systems, that changes on the weekly. So if for us, for example, we have a component where, we have forensic science, for example, and criminology. So that is our cybersecurity arm. So that's where students will get varying courses to support that. If you're not embracing cybersecurity in your curriculums, you're doing your students a disadvantage, because that's where the career is going, right? And a very profitable one in any given, entity. And secondly, when we look at globally what's happening with the threats we're having to our country and abroad, and our credit cards, or we all shop online. I know I do. I shop too much online. We're always at risk. So even though I'm not a cybersecurity guy, I'm not. I still try to, at a very basic level, have an understanding of what do I need to have secure. What do I have, antivirus thing for this, and how do I use my phone? How do I use And that's why we rely on individuals like yourself to be like, listen, tell me what to do, because we're not, we're the layperson. You understand the language. It's a whole different language. It's legit a different language. And today, if you look at the career tracks, man, I mean, it's just incredible what you can do in the field. So,
ditto.
Yo, look, so Looking at the, you said something really interesting about K through 12 for a second. I want to put that back in perspective. What are your views on how students and teachers should be adopting this type of mindset with technology in the classroom? Because a lot of teachers are against like the cell phone still. They still
Right.
like,
There's a lot of policies about that.
we not with it, right? And then you got this whole Chat GPT thing and artificial intelligence or AI, because we didn't really verify what it was for those that don't know, in machine learning into this classroom thing. And then it's like you're telling not only just teachers in the classroom to adopt to this change, but also parents. How does, that's changing the whole dynamics of the household. And then on top of that, we got TikTok and social media, and it's a whole thing to conjust into like the classroom and the household. What do you think, because you're a parent, what do you think as far as how that kind of impacts classroom and household?
I'll say initially it was difficult because my sons, they grew up at the early phases of like Facebook and things like that, for example. And cell phones, like I think my oldest, we gave him a cell phone. He might have been like in middle school because he was responsible for his younger brother, and it was a transport thing and safety thing. But he had the real basic one at that time, whatever that would be. But like now, fast forward, 20 something years now, what you find is that I oftentimes hear parents talk about, well, what's the appropriate age to even give children the cell phone?
Yeah.
So I think that's the initial one, right? And when we talk about digital literacy and fluency, for example, the major part of it is the access. So when you look at like Black and brown communities, for example, they still are grossly underrepresented for having access to these resources. We saw it during COVID, for our students trying to learn. They were going to McDonald's and they're going to Target parking lots because they needed Wi-Fi.
Right.
Because, we have a lot of folks from rural North Carolina. We have folks even from the city or urban, North Carolina cities that don't have the resources and access. So for me,
Internet deserts.
exactly.
Yeah.
So for the K through 12 piece, and they did a very good job with obviously federal support to provide hotspots and stuff like that for their students. But the reality of it is, number one, it's access. And then with that access, you have to understand that some of their parents may not be as sophisticated with this technology, with this language. Yeah, everybody knows about social media and stuff like that. But, how many times we heard about kids having 3 and 4 Facebook accounts and the parents only knew about one? And things like that. So I think, access is key. I think education is more profound, and this is where the school system and the parents have to continue to form alliances, and that's not always easy. That's, it's easier said than done. Where, you're individuals like yourself, professionals, whomever, maybe even in school, you have, some cyber guys teaching tech like that, having workshops where parents could come in and become educated. Because the reality of it is, if you don't know, you don't know. And I think sometimes it's disingenuous to assume, because we live in this age, that everybody has the same access and knowledge to everything. And that's not true. We see here in North Carolina, you know what I mean? So education, balance the scales, but we got to do a better job, even with policies. And policies is a bigger issue, right? That's a district issue, right? But you got to figure out as educators how to convey that this is actually the phones are a resource, technology is the resource, and how do we, I hate to use the word control, but how do we manage it so that it's equitable and it doesn't harm the kids? Because at the end of the day, you don't want them being bullied, because that's a big thing, cyberbullying. You got parents creating, pages and threatening people over cheerleading or football, or it's just insane what you see adults do today. So, and I'll let Rod take the rest.
What you think, Rashad? You've been in the classroom before.
Like I said, I think, the approach towards education, for the next 20 years is going to be, vastly different than we have ever witnessed because of technology itself. Kids are going to get access to it, period, right? So the only thing that you can do is embrace the way that you teach to students. So for instance, like, Doc mentioned the Black and brown community. There are a lot of excerpts coming out now about the history of blacks in America, right? So, we know that Columbus did discover America, for instance, right? So now you can go and research any type of data to kind of, placate your mind into what happened during that time. And so if the educational system doesn't catch up with that, now you got students reading stuff at home and discussing it with their friends before they get to the classroom. And now when you say, the Columbus discovered America, now it's going to be an argument, right? Because now I feel like I know something a little bit different, but because the way that you are
instructionally,
instructionally, like the way that you are used to teaching, that's null and void. You like literally education has to marry the real world and education at this point, because there's so much information out there. You want to be able to, kind of construct your curriculum to that of the world, because literally as I'm talking to you about, I don't know, Denmark Vesey, for instance, or something like that, right? You could be Googling him and find out a fact about him in 2.3 seconds faster than the teacher can teach you about it. So it's just about being responsible about that digital education and understanding that the world, we have to start teaching our students, our faculty, staff, anybody, involved in the, learning situation. You have to teach them that you have to think more global now, because the global community is right in our pocket and is in our hand. And so, but this, because the kids grow up with it, they're already globally minded in a sense, right? But so you get to, a professor that may have a sedentary mindset where it's like, come sit down, listen to me about this, is that, and the third. That time is dying, right? So you're talking about, and to Doc's point, you're talking about reinvesting digital literacy in the community. So that means, where the millions of dollars are going to need to be invested for the entire city of Winston-Salem to have great internet, right? So that the entire city can have phones and laptops and be able to go anywhere in the city and be connected to internet, right? So that type of mindset has to be implicated, from city to city and state to state in order for you to really embrace digital literacy.
That's
deep.
Because then it's not, once again, it's just not exclusive to educational. I mean, any district in any given city, any given state, in our country is funded by the government, man. So it intersects. Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate that. It intersects, man. So it's like, it becomes incredibly important to do that, man. Like to ensure, that it's equitable across. Because, the reality of it is 20 years from now, like it's gonna be insane.
It's gonna be crazy
to see what our world, like, I grew up watching the Jetsons, man. I was a kid, right? And that was so far-fetched. We ain't that far from it, man. Like, flying this, flying that, the computers, the access, and we all are married to technology.
For sure.
Like, if anyone, we back it up to this server or that server, but I know me, if I lose my cell phone, obviously, I got several components of it, but, I'm like in trouble, right? So,
Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely have to embrace it. But I think, again, education is the slowest to adopt that change. In your area with cyber security and all of that, you guys are at the forefront of all of it. So it's like literally the fastest and the slowest are, in the same space. You feel what I'm saying? It's like, and it's just like, man, so how are we going to do this? But it takes a robust training of your staff, the people that, being educated, and you have to make it fun for them as well. And I think, I think for me, working in education, I think, the assumption is that because they're a teacher, they've arrived at this place. But you and I and Jack know that, you're never arrived at any frame of knowledge, bro. You gotta continue. Yeah, you gotta continue, educating. But you have to educate Doc a little bit differently than you educate the 19-year-old or 20-year-old, right? So like where he is in his life and where he's been and all this sort of stuff, you have to incorporate that to make the learning process interesting for him. Because I promise you make it interesting for him, he's gonna make it interesting for his students as well. But that takes a much more expansive thought process when you're talking about, being in the city of Winston-Salem and maybe, getting him to travel a little bit more. Hey, Doc, we want you to go to this conference. Hey, Doc, we want you to travel here and travel there. Maybe take a group of students here to go to to this conference and all of that. Expanding that, the teacher's mind expands the environment and the students at the same time. But again, where is that? You know, that mindset has to be there, and the investment has to be there for more than 20 years. You know,
What would make it fun though? Like somebody for you and then somebody for you. Like if I was to bring that to you.
You know, for me, it's simple, man. It's just, I mean, they have to be passionate and engaged. Like, so once again, Rashad hit it on the head. Like, my professional and intellectual kind of place in on this planet right now is much different than a 19-year-old, right? But the one thing I think the 19-year-old and myself can both agree to is that we both don't want to be bored. So for example, like if we're talking about workshops and stuff, I mean, they have to be engaging, right? I think it's better, and you know, we all know this, we're all in education in one way or another. You know, the earlier you get these kids excited about technology, STEM, cybersecurity, the easier it is as they get older. You know, I'm like, you know, an old dog, new tricks kind of guy, but I'm a lifelong learner, so I'm cool with it. And I learn differently, I receive information differently. We know kids are very visual, so whatever you do, it has to be very, you know, whether it's incorporating, you know, virtual reality, augmented, whatever it is, you gotta be able to engage them much differently than the traditional setting. You know, the very, you know, monotone, behind a podium, you know, no, they're not gonna do that. The PowerPoint slide, no, they're not
Throwbacks.
Throwbacks, I'm getting triggered as we speak right now, right? So it's like, and Rashad and I, we always joke about, like, you know, the objective is when you go into that classroom to be very, you know, theatrical. Like, that's our stage, like, you know, and it's like, you know, and it could be frustrating because you give it your all and sometimes they're not receptive. You're like, you're like, what you doing? Like, I'm in here giving you everything, like, you know, and they're just like on the phone, which really frustrates you sometimes.
It's a Monday morning.
Right, it's about, yo, like every day, right? So it's like, so for me, that's very important. And Rashad hit this piece it's always the elephant in the room, but it's resources.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, when we talk about government, like he said, you guys, y'all got the budget, y'all got the $1 billion this, $1 billion that. School systems, depending on where you at, you know, Charlotte Meck being, you know, the largest as for our state, and then you look at larger, you know, states like New York and Cali that would have, you know, very, very robust budgets. How much of that gets filtered into what you're discussing? And how much of that is political and partisan? And how much is that, like, people are really like, yo, we need to make sure these kids are prepared. Because I will say this, I'll let Rod go. I've been all over, man, all over the world, man. And I've seen school systems from Asia to South America to Europe, whatever the case may be. And I'm gonna tell you, they do it much better than we do. They just do. When I was in Asia, for example, you know, K through 12, they do their K through 12. They go home, they break bread with their families, you know, because they're very communal that way. Then they go back and they do their STEM stuff, they do their language immersion, and they do that like 6 days a week, all day. And here we're complaining about, man, maybe we need to make classes shorter. And the world is like, nah, like they're competing to beat us.
Right.
So if we're thinking kind of from a, you know, we're all athletes in one way or another. Like if you think of competitively, like we are behind the 8 ball dramatically.
For sure.
Globally,
Yeah.
when it comes down to cybersecurity
Absolutely.
and STEMs.
My final word on that is that our concept of how we receive education in this day and time needs to be flipped. I think that, you know, to piggyback off what Doc said about lifelong learning, it used to be, you know, an ancient, you know, learning system where everything was connected to one thing, right? I mean, well, connected all in one piece. So science was connected to math, and math was connected to language arts and history and culture and all of these different things. And so that's a very communal type of thinking and living. And I think, honestly, you know, in the countries that he's talking about, they have embraced a communal type of, you know, thing. I'll share this story. I read this story about this Japanese girl. She was alone on a train in Japan. And nobody was worried about her because it was the community's, you know, it was the community's what do you call it?
Responsibility.
Their responsibility to make sure
right.
she was good.
Yep.
And so she was only like maybe about 12 years old, navigating the subway system by herself, going to get something to eat. Just doing that whole thing in the city, right? And so just thinking about how powerful if a people got behind that concept, how powerful education would be for this country if we just understood that, parents, you have you don't get to opt out of your children's education. They're not just going to school all day up until 2:30, come home, do their homework, and then y'all hang out. No, we're all learning as a family. So education is a never-ending type of spool of learning and development for the entire family. So
That's powerful, dog. I got two more things real quick, and then we're gonna get up out of here. And I'm gonna pivot the conversation just for 2 seconds. It's still about education, though. But for you, Dr. Monell, you are a product of community college. I saw your post a few days ago, and it was in regards to the education. You want to talk about what's your views, as well as you, Mr. Little, about some students thinking that they got to go straight to college in order to be this type of product or success product at the end result. In my classrooms, I tell students, your path ain't the same as everybody else's.
Surely isn't.
Take a different path, man. If you got to go to community college for 1 year or just to get 24 credits real quick to transfer to a 4-year college to get your bearing, it's okay.
Right.
But what is your viewpoint on that?
So,
Dr. Monell.
So I'm straight up a non-traditionalist, man. So,
from Brooklyn.
Yeah, from Brooklyn. Shout out to Brooklyn, man. Old Brooklyn. So I'm a non-traditionalist in the sense that, we all have grown up in a very, Eurocentric patriarchal society with requirements as to what we deem as success and how to obtain those levels of success. You graduate high school, you go to college, university that is, you find your wife, you get married. We're boxed into this ideological kind of perspective of what the American dream is, right? That farce, right? And what we find is that box doesn't apply to everybody. You're a little bigger than I'm a little smaller. we need to make the box a little bigger.
True.
Maybe
need to make it bigger.
Maybe we don't need the box because I tend to be very organic. Right?
True.
I like the way I like to interact and engage with people like that. So the community college piece is critical, right? I tell students all the time. We get a lot of transfer students on campus. I always tell when I talk to young people in high school still, I'm like, whether you're first gen or you're third gen, as far as education goes, post high school, you have to follow your own journey, man. So for me, community college is an incredible opportunity for people to kind of figure out, okay, maybe this college thing ain't for me. Maybe I need to go to a vocational school without exhausting the financial burden. Because the reality of it is, and if you look at, once again, black and brown folks, we're like 85, 90% Pell Grant recipients. For those who don't know what that means that you live under a certain level of poverty or right below, right above it, as far as middle class, lower middle class, which means you rely on financial aid to go to college. You're not balling, unless you've been blessed, that somebody put down. So because of that, why incur the debt? Because what happens, Ron, I see this all the time. How many times we come across a student who's had 4 majors in 5-6 years because they're not clear. You take a science, whoa, that's not me. You take a social, behavior science, but I don't like writing papers. So you're trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
You can figure all of that out at over 60% of the rate at a community college.
Facts.
Without the room and board and everything else. You still can live home, work, earn some money, learn those skill sets if you haven't already. So for me, I'm a big proponent of community colleges. And in fact, shout out one of my former ones here in North Carolina, Central Piedmont, for example, Central Piedmont Community College, the largest community college in the state. Over 70,000 students, give or take, 7 campuses.
70,000.
And they do an incredible job at educating people and providing them access. Because the reality of it is, everybody don't need to go to university. I'm not that guy, like you got to be successful and have a degree. Nah, education for me was an opportunity to change my social class, but it was for me. It wasn't, I'm gonna find a way regardless. But for me, that was my journey. everybody else's journey is different. So, I'm a big proponent, and I feel like, quite frankly, that we shouldn't charge for community colleges. And a lot of states will go in that direction, like finding resources, because these students, young and seasoned, because you got returning people who worked in the field, and then after 30 years they got let go, but they can't retire, so they come back and they learn about computers, and stuff. Community colleges, I will always big up, community colleges, because I think it's an incredible tool and resource to our communities nationwide.
So I don't know what the word is, but maybe retooling the way that we see education is key.
Reimagine the narrative. That's it. Reimagine.
So for instance, I think that certifications need to be a part of the educational process, right? And I think the internships need to be introduced way earlier, right?
Yes.
So,
Absolutely.
because, there's a difference in this economy between being a generalist and being a specialist, right? You get paid like a generalist, right? As Doc just alluded to, he got his education to improve his social status, right? So, whenever you earn more, you earn more, right? But the thing is that you don't have to wait for that, right? Because we got this hurry up and wait mentality in education, right? Where you're gonna have to go through the same type of rigor that I went through, and wait 60 years to make $60,000. It's like,
that's
no,
crazy.
That's not gonna work. Not when I can learn a specialized skill and make $60,000 in the next 90 days.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying? And to Doc's point, students that are attending school on a Pell Grant, $60,000 is a lot of money, because some of our graduates, coming from Winston-Salem State, or coming from a lot of these colleges that in third, they're at $65,000 or $70,000 a year, they're the highest earners in their family, right? And they're getting borrowed from a lot, right?
Yep.
So
they're providing for them. Yep.
Exactly. So not only are we talking about educating specialists, but we're also talking about having shared knowledge where you can create that again for your people as well. So that's when you bring in investing, and you bring in different forms of education to help your family kind of raise that awareness of where your family needs to be. Because last time I checked, the Black and brown community, in terms of economics, we're at the bottom rung of the ladder, right? So everybody wants to improve that piece, right? So for instance, if I'm going to a 4-year institution, and let's just say that they don't offer cybersecurity, for instance, but they offer it at Forsyth Tech, right? So I could still put that on and be billed for that, and go to class at Forsyth Tech. Or if I wanted to minor in cybersecurity, maybe I could take online classes at your Harvards of the world, or Stanfords, or whatever. I could take any class in the country, or any program in the country, because we're all connected through education. That's the type of thing I'm talking about. So instead, you still get your degree from your 4-year institution, but it'd be mixed and intermingled with classes that qualify you for a certification. That certification, you might have qualified for that your sophomore year, and now you can go to the career services department. It's a different conversation now, because now I can go and get jobs and start right away, right? Or start an intense informed internship as well. Maybe I don't need a lot of money in college, but again, making $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 as a graduate, as a continuing student, is a lot of money. You know what I'm saying? Especially when you got room and board and all this sort of stuff, right? So introducing work and earning potential early in the educational process is where we're going, in my opinion.
Okay.
That's good.
I appreciate that, man. It's deep too. Very interesting perspectives. I appreciate all of that. And it's nothing new to me. This is our regular conversations anyway, but it'll be new to them. So as we close out, man, anything you want to shout out, or you want to announce, any type of good news, publications you got coming out, type of research?
Google me.
Google them, right?
But just continue for everybody, man. Just continue to balance the scales, man. That's always my thing with this. Be involved in, because we're talking about the educational process. Be involved in your children's educational journey from day one. K through 12 is not the place you toss your kids. You can't have it both ways. You can't leave your kid in the school, expect a teacher to raise your child, and then when they maybe are influencing them in a way that maybe doesn't rub you well, then you want to complain about it. And how you address that is you become more involved. So my thing is, because we get them as young adults or adults, and when they come to us, sometimes we have a lot of work to do to forget the intellectual stuff. I'm talking about the life skill stuff, like just teaching them how to engage with people in a manner that's professional or appropriate. You know what I mean? And I'm not talking about respectability politics. I'm just talking about how we engage as humans. You know what I mean? So be engaged with your kids. Pay attention to what you see educationally, because especially here in our state, we're seeing instances of very powerful people are trying to reimagine what K through 12 looks like, and it doesn't reflect our values, so to speak. So that's my 2 cents. Shout out to Brooklyn.
Shout out to Brooklyn, baby.
Old Brooklyn.
Old Brooklyn. Shout out.
Appreciate Dr. Morris. It's my guy, super cybersecurity geek. Super cool. You see how he's blinging. You see how he rolls, man.
It's another level, dog.
Yeah, another level. Respect.
Oh my goodness.
You see this guy, yo?
This
Another
edification
level,
is
dog.
crazy.
Yo, Teachers Lounge is crazy, B. Yo, Shad, you want to, thank you for coming, by the way, man. You want to shout out, you want to leave us with anything?
I was gonna say, man, my final word is simple, man. Never get too comfortable with thinking that you know all there is to know.
That part.
Just don't ever get too comfortable with that, man. Because honestly, you just gotta keep, like he's saying, like keep flipping the page, keep learning, and then remember that you are always gonna be the best book and best, knowledge that you'll ever learn. So keep pointing to yourself, keep podcasting, keep reading, keep sharing, and keep these conversations going, because that's how we all grow. And we're never finished growing, man. It's infinite. So, but yeah, special shout out to High Point, North Carolina. That's where I'm from. Shout out to my mom. You know what I'm saying, with that pound cake. You know what I'm saying, and the yams.
Cndid.
And the candy
Cndid
yams.
situation.
Candy yams, kickback. Just shout out to everybody I kick it with, man. Peace and blessings to everybody. Yeah.
Okay. And how do they find y'all on social media?
All right, so good. I'll let you go, Mr. Candy Yams.
You can find Cndid Yams Kickback at Cndid Graham, Cndid Graham, and then Cndid Yams Kickback on everything else. And then my personal channel is Rashad Edico. So you can follow me there on Instagram.
For me, it's simple. LinkedIn is my name, and then that's my professional site. And then for Instagram, it's Project Kid WPHD. That's it's a little. Kind of a little bit of my personality, a little bit of my shenanigans, and I believe that life is about balancing work with play. So you get a little bit of both on that platform.
I appreciate that, man. It got 2 very impactful figures. I don't think y'all understand who these guys are.
3.
Look, man, I'm just a gem in your world, bro. You know what I'm saying?
You blinded me with the ice.
What is
Just a
happening
joke.
right now?
Listen, though.
What is going on?
Listen, though, bro. It's not about me. It's about us.
No doubt,
Feel me?
man.
Nah, but real talk, I appreciate y'all, and I thank y'all for bringing all of this knowledge to this podcast, for one, and letting your ceiling be somebody else's ground floor.
There you go.
You know what I'm saying? Respect that.
Oh, that was prophetic. That was prophetic. Boy, you've been working on that. That was
Brothers, man.
Hey, you gotta chill.
That ain't no chat.
You
You
need
know
to-
what I'm saying?
You need to put that on a bumper sticker, B.
You know what I'm saying? That's in my book, baby. Get that. You know what I'm saying?
Get that, son.
Get that, B.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Shout out to the brothers. You feel me? Wow. Nah, but yo, as we close out, man, for real, I appreciate y'all coming through.
Absolutely.
This is Dr. Morris, aka Dr. Digital. Welcome to the Teachers Lounge, man, and thank y'all for coming.
Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you.